Want to let you know that you can submit questions via the Q&A portal on Zoom. For those of you that are joining us via Facebook, either the PCA page or the Little League International page, welcome to the webinar. We're excited to have you all here. We're going to get things started here now and really dive into what should be a really great conversation for everyone that's attending, excited to get back to playing, making sure that we're doing it in a safe way. My name is Jason Sachs. I'm the Executive Vice President for Business Development and Philanthropy at Positive Coaching Alliance. We're proud partners of Little League International, and we know that we have many local Little Leagues that are partners around the country that are tuning in today. I am joined by, and really the two folks that'll be having the conversation today is one, Dan Velt, Senior Operations Executive from Little League International, and Dan is also a Little League coach himself. So Dan, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thank you for having me.
And from Positive Coaching Alliance, we have Marty Reed, who is the National Partnerships and Marketing Manager for PCA. And Marty is a NCAA championship winning former softball player at UCLA. So a lot of good insight. Also a PCA trainer, so goes out and does a lot of our workshops and presentations on behalf of PCA. So one last reminder, those of you joining by Facebook, feel free to send in questions in the Facebook page and we'll get those answered. And then those of you that are on the Zoom webinar, please use the Q&A function to send in any questions. But for now, enjoy, and I will hand it over to Marty.
Thank you so much, Jason. Welcome, everyone. Really excited about today's conversation. I mean, we've been partnered with Little League since 2007, I believe, Dan. And so we've been working together for a very long time to provide resources and, focused in that social emotional learning space for coaches and for athletes and for parents. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. And just when we're thinking about getting back into season, getting everyone back out there on the field. I know everyone's really anxious and excited to get back out there, and we are going to be remaining focused on, supporting the social and emotional needs of our youth athletes as they process the, trauma resulting in surviving a global health crisis. So for youth baseball and softball players returning to the field, coaches need to have some new and unique techniques and skills to assist in this transition back. So I'd love to just start off with talking about, what are some of the things that our young athletes are going to be feeling as they're returning back out there on the field? Let's just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, a lot of the players are going to be a little bit emotional and they're really not going to know what to expect when they're coming back. So fortunately, my son and I, we went through it last year. We were able to have a season, and it was really interesting early on. A lot of the players, some of them were a little nervous to be out there. Thankfully, though, kids are resilient and they're able to work through that rather quickly. And it's the most important thing is, as adults, we're just letting them have fun and really ease back into it. So just considering the fact that they haven't been together for a while or they haven't played organized activities, and so let them ease back into it. It's not something that we have to be too strict with or get them back into the groove too quickly. So ultimately just being as patient as we possibly can with them.
That's great advice. Definitely don't want to rush into things, knowing that they're going to, feel a bit of a fear and anxious and anxiety, maybe fear of making mistakes, fear of not showing improvement since the last time they've been out there on the field. So they might have those types of feelings, but also we're hoping that they'll be excited as well, very excited and anxious to get out there too. But I think about some of the ways that coaches can address the challenges that they'll be facing as we return to the season. One that comes to mind is, recognizing the different degrees of impact, right? Mm-hmm. This pandemic has definitely had a different level of impact depending on different families and backgrounds and all those things. So not everyone on their teams are going to be impacted the same way. So I think that's something that coaches are going to have to recognize and be aware of. And also creating that space for continued to learn as we go, right? We don't have all the answers, and that's okay. I think it's important for coaches to remain neutral and factual in these conversations, and being okay with saying, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm here for you throughout, right?
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed is that ultimately, if the coaches are patient and they take in just some time to understand what the players and families are really dealing with, because they have a variety of feelings and emotions coming out of it, as you noted, that's the most important thing. And that was a huge takeaway for me is just be patient. And we're asking all coaches to be patient. So just don't jump right into it. And we are really fortunate to have a clinical psychologist that used to be on our board, Dr. Daryl Burnett. And he talked a lot about decreasing the stress, decreasing negative emotions, and ultimately, we feel it's our responsibility to make sure that we are preparing these volunteers for what they're getting into. And no one ultimately is prepared for this when you sign up to coach youth sports. And so we've been taking time over the course of the summer and heading into the season to really provide a lot of resources to give our coaches an opportunity to be successful and really pointing them to all the tremendous resources that PCA has created for them. Taking some time, be patient, familiarize yourself with all of those things. And I think you're going to be more comfortable and confident going into that position, and it's going to show, and the kids are going to have a better experience.
Right. And you mentioned being comfortable and confident. You're setting the tone as the coach, right? And as the parent, as an adult. Kids are going to feed off of our, emotional levels and our, positivity. So it's important that we're coming to practice and showing up, with our e-tanks full. We talk about filling the emotional tank and making sure that you're remaining positive and constantly reaffirming our kids. So I think that's one thing that we have to make sure that we're doing as soon as we get out there to the field.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. When we returned to the field last year, I was a little bit nervous, not knowing what to expect. But I knew if I was prepared and I went into it and I had a plan, it was going to create a better experience for the kids. And so, that is a huge takeaway for me from last year. Is as a coach, I want to make sure that I'm over communicating with the parents and also with the kids of what the expectations are. So lay the groundwork early that here's what everyone should expect. We're going to go into it. We're a team here, and let's make sure that we're all on the same page.
Nice. And you mentioned preparing ahead of time and coming with a plan. What did that plan look like, and how did you prepare for that? Because I think some coaches and parents need to help or need some help preparing for this return.
Yeah, what I did, and also what we're communicating with everyone to do, is really to over communicate leading up to the season. So we had probably a couple of months before we were able to actually get on the field. And so we were able to connect a lot with the parents. And in this situation, I don't think you can communicate enough with the parents about what to expect, how we're going to handle practice, where you can stand, where you can't stand, all of those things. If we communicate ahead of time, it's going to lead to a better experience for everyone. So there's not a lot of surprises going into the practice or going into the games. So that was really the approach that I took last season, and something that we're preaching to all of our volunteers is just make sure that you are prepared going into it, going into the practice, going into the games, so that you can really just focus on the kids and you don't have to focus so much on everything else that's going on. And I think the kids will recognize that.
That's great advice. Absolutely. And over prepared, I think, definitely spend that time preparing so you don't feel behind when you're there in front of the kids. Now, we talk about getting social again, right? And getting comfortable being social and interacting with other kids. So what are some ways that we can help athletes get comfortable being social again in a more socially distanced world?
Yeah, great question. So, and I'm laughing because as we went through this, we started to have our practice plans, and our first couple of practices, it was really drill heavy, and we were going to just jump right back into it. And ultimately what I found is the kids they want to be back together with each other and they want to have fun. And so if they wanted to do home run derby, we did home run derby. If they wanted to scrimmage and set up the rules, we let them do that. And that was a huge takeaway for me again, is a lot of times when we're leaving practice and my son and I just have some good time when we're driving back home. And when he's really talkative about the experience, about how much fun he had, then I know it was a good practice or a good event for him. If we were really drill heavy, the kids recognize that and they're just looking to get back out there and have some fun. And so really what we did is we focused on the fun. We let the kids pick, what do you want to do? And I think that allowed them to be a little bit more comfortable with each other as they transition back. And another thing that we've been able to recognize is throughout the course of the pandemic, we have been connecting with a lot of our volunteers at various levels. And we've heard a lot of really good stories about coaches, teams connecting over Zoom just to get to know each other.
Right.
Not all the kids go to school together or familiar with each other, and that's really helped out a lot. So they get to know each other, play some games over Zoom, see some faces, and then when they get together, they're ready to go.
I love that. And you mentioned, asking the kids what they want to do, right? Getting them talking a bit more. And one of the things at Positive Coaching Alliance that we use, a tool that we use with coaches, is ask rather than tell. A lot of times as coaches, we want to just come in right away and start giving instructions and coaching. Sometimes we overcoach. Instead, I think we, especially now, need to take a step back and ask more questions and get the kids talking and get them more comfortable again, talking to each other. And it helps also develop player coaches, where they can actually get out there and correct themselves, self-correct, and, work with their teammates and give advice to their teammates and things like that. So it gets them talking more. And some good questions that I've heard coaches use after a kid does a skill or something, asking them, how did you do that? And making them explain it back to you, right? Or asking them how comfortable they are with this drill or this skill on a scale of 1 to 5, and getting them to answer these questions. What are some other ways that you get kids talking when it comes to the game and when it comes to baseball and softball?
Yeah, I think just, to be honest with you, we let them kind of coach on their own. And so, in these situations, one thing that I noticed with my children is they just want to be with their friends and they want to be able to interact and they want to be kids. And so again, early on, we were trying to really micromanage every aspect of the practice or the event. And so later on, we really took a step back. And one of the great programs that we established, really rolled out last year, is Little League Sandlot Fundays. It's our version of pickup basketball. You really just roll out the equipment, you let the kids pick the rules, you decide how they want to play. And so we started to do a little bit more of that. So we're on the sidelines and letting the kids really dictate everything. They don't have an adult telling them what to do. And I found that that was a tremendous benefit for the kids. Is again, less pressure. The kids are out there, they can set the rules. They're not dictating, or we're not dictating to them what they have to do.
Right.
I looked out one time, they're playing with a tennis ball. And I have to admit, a lot of times the coaches or other adults want to get out there, but I found it that the kids really had a great time doing that. And again, if my son's talkative on the way home and he says that was great, we had a good time, do you see this play, then I know they're having fun. So as crazy as it may seem, just taking a step back a little bit and letting the kids have a little bit more control in that situation.
That's great advice. That's great advice. But then for those coaches who have teams that might be a little more shy or reserved or a little scared to interact with each other, so they've got a team that they're looking at that are quiet and not taking that lead to, run practice on their own, we've created a tool called the buddy system, where you have them partner up with each other, so coaches aren't the only ones responsible for filling that emotional tank. They can have the kids and the players fill each other's tanks by partnering at the beginning of practice, with a buddy, and they're responsible for filling their buddy's tank all day, all throughout practice, showing them appreciation, giving them, fist pumps or safe kind of distance high fives and things like that. I think is one way to help increase what we call that magic ratio of 5 to 1 tank fillers to tank drainers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I love that. And last year we were definitely the worst team in the league. I think we were 1-11 or something like that. And on one hand, it's tough to see the kids go through that, but I think in some strange way they all will benefit from that. It's part of life. You don't win all the time, but the fact that they were able to come together, and it was really more about developing relationships, supporting your teammates, and I had a great support system with the other coaches that I worked with. And teammates, building teamwork and teammates and relationships was much more important to us than really winning on the field. And I think the kids are going to benefit from that. At the end of the day, you have a lot of parents coming up to you and saying that I hope my child's on your team next year. And that's obviously a good sign and shows that the kid had enjoyed their experience.
Yes. And then just honing in on the relationship aspect, making sure that we're leading with relationships first before we're thinking about, all the X's and O's that'll come. But if you've got a team that's connected, then they're going to be committed, right? It's a lot of times coaches are wondering, why am I not getting my players to listen to me? Or, it's like, well, they have to have that time to connect first, right? And really get comfortable with each other and have fun. So I think it's really important to just start off the season, start off practice with just more opportunities for them to connect and build those relationships and get to know each other, ask questions and listen rather than just respond right away, right? So I think for coaches, there's another thing that we talk about called the winner circle, where they stand in a circle and everyone has to go around and say something positive about the person next to them, just like filling each other's emotional tank. And yeah, that's a little more organized. But if you've got a team that's a bit shyer and not opening up right away, and you're not seeing the commitment right away, we got to find some ways to make that connection.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, baseball and softball can be a tough game, obviously.
Yeah.
You're the only one up there. You're the only one at bat. And so if it's a big situation and you don't do well, you want the kids to understand and comfort their teammate. And so building those relationships early in the season, I think, plays a huge part in developing that sense of teamwork and camaraderie throughout the season. So I couldn't agree more.
And it lasts forever, honestly. Like I played softball at UCLA, and one thing that we did, this is a college team, right? Before each season, every girl would write down one reason why she loved playing with you. So each person had a sheet of paper, and on the top it said, I can't wait to go to battle with Marty because, and every girl wrote a reason why she just couldn't wait to play with me. And till this day, I have 4 sheets of paper from each year I played softball there that I can read now today, and it will fill my emotional tank. Just hearing others talk about how they appreciate you is so important. And that helped us build those relationships that we still have today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use that this year. Building that confidence is so important, especially with kids at a young age. Is winning and losing, as my team certainly showed last year, is not the most important thing. But again, they're all having fun. The end of the season pizza party, everyone gets along, and everyone wants to be there. And those are signs to me that you did something and you were successful in creating a great experience for those kids. So I love those ideas. It's just a great opportunity for kids to connect and feel better about each other.
Yes, thank you so much. Absolutely. And for those listening in through Facebook or on Zoom now, thank you for putting in your questions. We're going to get to those questions. Feel free to drop some questions in the Facebook comments as well. We do have a question I want to bring up from one of our participants for you, Dan. He says, with many of our children returning to baseball and softball, this is their first interaction to larger groups as well as their parents. There is some anxiety about returning to play. What are you seeing and recommending with regards to the use of waivers protecting our organizations under COVID?
Yeah, I would start with, when we're talking about parents, I think we should answer it this way. So parents have to be willing to be flexible and accommodating and understand that we're going to be making some changes, and it may not be a traditional season as they recognize. And I'll give you a quick story and an example. Last year, our kids, they couldn't sit in the dugout. And so all the kids sat in the bleachers, and we communicated with them ahead of time that the parents aren't going to be able to be on the bleachers, and communicating with the kids throughout the game. So we wanted them to go down the line. So as it relates to waivers and things, we feel as an organization that just like the parents, just like the coaches, we have to be flexible and accommodating too. And so we want people to reach out and talk to their league officials, talk to the Little League staff so that we can help them out along the way. And we can provide a path for them to have a good experience heading back into the season. Our theme this year is really just to be flexible and accommodating as much as we possibly can. So we would encourage those people to reach out to your local board and also reach out to the Little League staff so we can see if we can assist.
Great advice. Be flexible and accommodating. I wrote that down. And there's another question here. Does requiring each athlete to have their equipment intended to limit transmission of viruses decrease participation from those most affected by pandemic economics?
Yeah, obviously that's a tough situation. And one of the things as an organization that we've been looking at over the course of the last couple of years is access and resources for kids. And so we're working with a lot of our partners to help to provide some of those resources, and also to our local leagues, so that it's never a barrier of entry for a kid to participate in the game. So we understand that you're not going to be sharing equipment as much as you're used to. But again, these are different times, and we're going to have to do some things differently. So we would encourage, again, people to reach out to us. And if we can help, we're going to make every effort that we possibly can to assist not only individual families, but local leagues as well, to make sure that they have the equipment that they need to play.
That's amazing. I know that this is something that's very, very apparent and an issue that's nationwide, the access and opportunity to participate, especially in a sport like baseball and softball. The equipment is not cheap. This is not an easy sport to just jump out there and play. So any support in those areas is very important. So I'm glad that that is something that's on your forefront and something that you guys are making sure that you're providing and helping families achieve.
Yeah, and that was, the thought of that heading into our season was a little daunting. How are we going to do this with catcher's equipment and
Yeah.
gloves and catcher's gloves? And I think just like anything, you work your way through it. The first couple of weeks are a little bit more challenging, and then you get a feel for it. But again, we're here to provide resources to our local league. So whether it's how to deal with equipment, or if there's anyone that we can work with on our side to assist with local leagues, we want our leagues and we want our volunteers and parents to reach out to us so that we can help out as much as we possibly can.
Great. Great. So you heard it here, folks. Make sure you're reaching out to your local leagues and also to national as well. I wanted to chat a bit about just making sure we're focusing on fun with this return out there, and just like fun activities to keep the kids engaged and motivated, right? As we're getting back out there and getting comfortable, being more social. What are some fun activities? And I'll share some of my ideas as well, if you want to go first.
Yeah, a couple of things that we really leaned on last year is kids want action.
Yeah.
And so early on, when we do want coaches and we want leagues to transition into the season slowly. So let's not jump right in, and let's not have kids on the mound throwing a lot of pitches. So let's ease into it on both the baseball and softball side. So what we did is we had a coach just kind of underhand tossing to the kids, putting the ball in play. And there was an awful lot of action, and the kids were scrimmaging in a game like, had a game like feel. And they really enjoyed that. And then two other things. We did a lot of home run derby, where we just had put the kids out in the outfield so that everyone could hit it over the fence. And then going back to that Little League Sandlot Funday that I talked about, we did that on a number of Sundays where the kids set the rules, they set the teams, and that was something that they had a great time doing. I know that my son was asking me when we can go back, and we had to pull them off the field rather than the kids asking to go home.
Love that, right? We want them to be so excited that they don't want to leave,
Right.
I think also, non-traditional sport games are always fun as well. I've done some games like charades with my girls, where each of them get to actually come up with a word and put it in a hat. Or you can provide the words as the coach if you'd like, and make them baseball or softball specific. And, as they pull words out, they've got to act it out, and their team has to guess what the word is and things like that, just to get them, having fun and getting loose. Before we get into the specific baseball, softball terms or skills and drills. And I think music and movement is also very important as well. I would try to bring speakers to practice, and also have my players all submit their favorite song, right? And so when we warm up, we're playing a playlist that all of them contributed to. So you can tell which girl sent in that song, because they'd be dancing on their song, which was really fun way to get them kind of loose at the beginning of practice and throughout. So I think music and movement is important. We've had our girls make up dances together, make up skits, rap songs, any way to get them working in a teamwork environment that sometimes doesn't have anything to do with baseball or softball, but it definitely creates that connection, keeps things more fun. Because if we lean on fun, like you said, they're going to want to come back. They're not going to want to leave practice. They're going to be excited. And that's what we want. We want them to have a positive experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that, the worst thing that, and I grew up playing baseball in a baseball family and obviously working in the industry for a number of years. And I can't stand when I see a practice where we're just doing batting practice and you have a lot of kids just standing around. And that's where kids lose interest in the game just simply because they're not active. It's not a lot of activity. So we did a lot of the same things, breaking up into smaller groups, playing music either during the games, before the games, or during practice. It just creates that fun experience, that environment for the kids. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, so we do have some questions from the audience, and keep asking your questions and sending them in. I'm going to try to do my best to get to as many as possible. This one says, my child's Little League experience will be his first ever team experience, and he won't know anyone on the team. How would you integrate him into interacting with his peers in a team environment? You want to go first, and then I can share as well.
Yeah, so I would, much like some of the examples that we shared earlier, I would definitely take some time before we get into the baseball and softball activity and work on kids getting to know each other. And regardless of the age, I agree that that is very important. It's easier at the younger ages because they're used to doing those things in a school type of setting, and you can get a little bit more creative and have fun with it. But at the same time, you can get creative and have fun with the older kids as well. So I think it's important before every practice to get everyone together and get to know each other a little bit. What are nicknames?
Yep.
What are their favorite baseball and softball teams? Whatever that may be, just getting the kids to know each other a little bit more. So I always try to take some time before practice, before we get into the actual activity, and get a little personal so that kids are a little bit more comfortable with each other.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned names and nicknames. I think knowing each other's name is a huge way to fill the emotional tank and create that connection. There's one game that we play called the name game, where they get in a circle, right? And you have a ball. You don't even have to use your gloves. You can use your gloves or not, but we keep them close because you want to hear each other. And what you do is you toss the ball to someone in the circle that's not directly next to you, and someone who hasn't received the ball yet. And when you toss the ball, you say your name out loud. The person that catches the ball has to repeat your name, then say their name and toss it to someone else in the circle that hasn't gotten the ball yet. And you kind of make a pattern with the way you're tossing the ball. And we try to go faster and faster, but you're saying each other's names out loud. And then I'll have them reverse and then go the opposite direction. So now you're saying someone else's name. So it's a really fun way to kind of and you can get them in two different circles so then they can compete to see who can go faster and things like that. So it's a good way to kind of get them playing, but also getting to know each other's name. And you can even add something to there, like say your name and your favorite food, something about yourself. So we add even more to it as well. It's just a fun game to help integrate the players to get to know each other and know a little bit about each other.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is a lot of times volunteers, they tend to go out and do what they did when they were a youngster playing. And a lot of times, unfortunately, with baseball and softball, the first thing we do is we grab a ball, we start playing catch, and then we transition into some sort of defense or maybe batting practice. And so really encouraging our volunteers, parents, everyone to utilize these resources. And this is a great time to be innovative and do some things differently. So I love those type of examples just to keep it fresh, keep it interesting for the kids. And at the same time, they have a great time doing it.
Right. So another question from the audience. How would you deal with social distance rule breakers? Some people who just don't want to follow those types of rules, aren't being as safe. How do we deal with those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, I don't think you can communicate enough to parents and to league officials throughout the course of transitioning back to the field. So the key, absolutely from day one, is to set the expectation for the parents and making sure that everyone understands that here's how we're going to be doing it this year, and continuing to communicate that to them and also to the kids. So that parents are going to have to be involved. And like I shared earlier, we had to do some things differently last year. We didn't use dugouts. We had the kids on the bleachers. And so depending on the ages of the kids, if they're younger, I would go to the extreme of putting spots in the bleachers where they have to sit, and so that they can understand that. But at the end of the day, if you communicate early and often with the parents and with the kids, everyone's going to get used to it and they're going to start to transition to it. By the end of the season, our kids never even tried to go in the dugout. They just knew that we were all sitting out in the bleachers. Right. And that's one small example. So communication is the key.
That's great. And you might have answered this already, but I do want to just share it out loud. Another listener said, we run a Little League Challenger program. What information or guidelines can you provide for social distance and the much needed physical support some athletes need by volunteers and family, etc.? I have a plan in place, but want to know what things Little League is suggesting for Challenger leagues and support of the athletes.
Yeah, so the number one thing that everyone has to do, regardless of where they are, what league they're playing in, is you have to check your local guidelines. And
Right.
that's the most important thing. So become very familiar with your local guidelines. And then once you have that, then you can establish your own policy and your own rules. So we have a lot of resources on our website that would allow leagues to transition to the field a little bit easier using our best practices. Everything from getting ready for the season to transitioning in between games. So whether it's a Challenger division or any other division of the program, everything can be found on our website, littleleague.org, where we have our best practices. But again, I would go back to first starting with your local guidelines. And I think that's going to give you a first step to putting your policy in place.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, like you said, over communicating is important and making sure that we're following those guidelines and making sure it's clear. So being that example as the league, leader out there,
Right.
making sure that we're following them as well. Now, this one is, did you have one more thing to
Yeah,
add?
I was just going to note that, in certain situations that it's nearly impossible to completely social distance. And so some of the guidelines that we have is face covering for adults and just being mindful of all of those things. So we understand that it's not going to be possible in every situation. And so part of those best practices is we have some guidelines for adults on what they can do to try to protect themselves and the kids as they get back to playing the game.
Nice. This question I think is important. It says, what are your suggestions in dealing with diversity, especially with boys playing with girls and vice versa?
Yeah, we have probably our best player last year was a female on our team, a female. She was the only female on a team of all boys. And so at the end of the day, I would encourage everyone to get involved as much as we possibly can. And one thing that we've taken a hard look at this year is really having our league officials reach out to schools and encourage everyone to play. So we talked about creating more access for everyone, regardless of race, regardless of gender. We want to get as many kids out there and providing them the experience of the Little League program and having a good time doing that. And so our position on that right now is really to educate our league officials and our volunteers on the importance of creating more access for everyone. So earlier we talked about being flexible and accommodating, whether it comes to waivers or doing some things differently. So as long as we can provide an opportunity for the kids to play, we want to be flexible and we want to give every kid an opportunity to play in the program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the most important jobs as a coach and as a program is to make sure you're creating an environment that's physically, emotionally, and psychologically safe for all kids, no matter where they're from, no matter what their gender is, their social and economic status, et cetera. So it's important to, I'd say, make sure that you're creating individual connections with each kid as well as a coach, listening to each kid's unique story, asking questions and listening to understand rather than just to respond, and creating opportunities for those kids to connect with each other. So a lot of times when you have teams that are very diverse, you might see right away when you say grab a partner and start playing catch, all the Black kids go over here, white kids go over here, all the Latinx go over here. We have to make sure that they're separating and linking up with people that they normally don't link up with, right? Making sure that they are practicing getting to know someone that they might not instantly relate to. So I think that's important to set that tone. When you have a diverse team and when you want to create a diverse team, you have to make sure that you're setting the tone in the environment that welcomes that, and we welcome each other's differences and celebrate them. So I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, for sure. And, one of the things that I've always loved about our program is really building the future leaders of tomorrow and just using the game of baseball and softball to do that. And so it's a great experience. It's a great life lesson for kids to really get to know each other and to experience that at a young age.
Yes, 100%. We are getting a lot of questions from audience members asking about additional funding and opportunities for league sponsorships and things
Yeah.
like that. I know that there is an initiative that you guys are planning on with the Lift Your League. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have a campaign right now called Lift Your League, where local leagues can sign up through the Little League website. And ultimately, it's a great fundraising opportunity for local leagues. And it allows, whether it's alumni or people in the community, to donate directly to the league. And it's through Sports Connect, through our partner. And it allows local leagues to take advantage of that. And it's a great fundraising opportunity for local leagues. I know my league is using it right now, and we're having some success doing it. So the campaign is running through March, and Little League is going to promote that through our social platforms and other platforms. And it's a great opportunity for local leagues and really a non-traditional way to fundraise, but it's easier for people to donate directly to the league, whether they're in the community or whether they're outside of the community. They have a chance to give back to the local league. And we all know that right now local leagues can use the funding to help support their initiatives.
Awesome. That's such a great idea. And I love that you're doing that. Now we're still getting a few more questions from the audience. I know our time is running up here, but I do want to make sure I get to as many as possible. And I have another one here. It says, with team parents, how do you involve them, or what expectations are there on them? Are coaches allowed to have parents volunteer to help with stations?
Yeah, absolutely. We would encourage as many volunteers as a local league can get. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that every volunteer goes through the complete background check that's required of all volunteers who have repetitive access to kids. So once they're cleared by the local league, it's a great opportunity to have more adults involved, whether it's in volunteers or whether it's in games or whether it's in practices. So having more parents involved, the kids like to see their parents involved. It helps out the coaches. It helps the game to move a little bit faster. So we would encourage, outside of maybe the traditional game where you have 3 adults on the field, practice is a great opportunity to get more adults involved. So go through that background check process, make sure that everyone's approved, and it's a good opportunity for leagues to get additional support.
Yes, absolutely. And, we love having volunteers out there helping and support, but it's important to make sure that they have those background checks and they're also trained as well. As you know, Positive Coaching Alliance's Zoom trainings all focus on the social emotional learning skills, helping coaches connect with athletes and really create a positive youth sports experience. So we'll share more resources in the chat box for coaches and parents to access throughout the season, but make sure you're utilizing those resources on Little League's website and also on Positive Coaching Alliance's website to access throughout your season and turn to. So you don't have to do this all by yourself. There's things out there to help you.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, can
use
you
the
share?
resources. That's what we've really been emphasizing to our local leagues is we've spent a lot of time putting these resources together. And again, we
Right.
feel it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone's prepared. So we want people to utilize those resources.
Absolutely. And another question from the audience says, can older children volunteer for help in practice or games of younger siblings?
Yeah, depending on the age. So I think that's a great opportunity to reach out first to the league officials to talk about that situation. And I'll give you an example. So whether it's coach pitch or the T-ball division where you're talking about 4 through 7-year-olds, those kids love to see the older kids come back. And so as long as they're supervised by an adult, it's a great opportunity to get those kids involved. And one of the things that we always like to see is even if it's weekends, you have the younger kids playing early on, they play in the big field, you're using the loudspeaker, you have the music going, creating that good environment for everyone where everyone wants to be there. And the younger kids love it when the older kids are involved. So whether it's coaching, helping out, as long as you have adults there to provide a little bit more guidance to some of the kids, I think it's a great opportunity to get those kids involved.
Yes, I think so too. Absolutely. I think you answered that very well. And I know we're getting some questions from the audience asking about just knowing that we have or last year shortened season or maybe even canceled seasons or no seasons at all. What are you suggesting for little leagues dealing with children that have aged out of their group? but they're lacking maybe the experience given a shorter season or no season. So they're saying that they've seen some parents that have asked if they can have their children play at a lower level for the year, given their lack of experience.
Yeah, it's a great question and something that we are getting a lot of. So, at the end of the day, we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to our age divisions. There are certain divisions where if you age out, you're not going to have the ability to come back. But what we found is if you transition the kids slowly back into playing, and as we talked about earlier, maybe taking a couple of weeks just to get everyone used to getting back on the field. We think kids are going to adjust. That's what we saw last year. So if you have a kid that aged out of a division, we're confident based off of the great flexibility and structure that we have that the kids will be fine moving forward. In the event that somebody does want to submit a waiver to us, we have a process that they can follow and work with our staff to submit that waiver. But again, there's significant flexibility when it comes to age structure. And so we're confident that everyone will find a division that works for them.
Absolutely. Awesome. I think we're coming into a close here pretty soon, but I do want to just mention, there's been a lot of resources shared for those tuning in the chat box for you to access, ways to help your kids or your players with their social emotional growth, with their mental health. If you're a first-time coach, utilize those resources as well, how to get acclimated in this new sports landscape. And also on Little League's page, there's a lot of updates from the coronavirus and safety and player safety, things that you can check into on there as well. Okay, so we're going to wrap up pretty soon here, but I wanted to give Dan another opportunity to just share any final advice that you have for those coaches and parents that are tuning in. I know your kid is 9 years old, right? You have a son that's 9.
Correct.
Have lived through this, going through it currently. So just share anything else that you want to offer to the coaches and parents that are listening in.
Yeah, number one, I can't stress enough the importance of following your local guidelines. So everything is slightly different. And so I would absolutely start there is get familiar with the local guidelines and make sure that the local league is familiar with that. And at the same time, I would encourage everyone to utilize the resources on the Little League website and of course through PCA as well. I think you're going to find that through all of those resources, through all those best practices, it's going to position you well to be successful as an adult volunteer. And at the end of the day, let the kids have fun. This isn't about transitioning fast to see who can win or worrying about going the opposite way during batting practice. This is about having fun, getting the kids back on the field. And I found that we were successful in doing that last year. We didn't win a lot of games, but our kids definitely led the league in fun for sure.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way to close us out today. Make sure that we're leading with fun. Let the kids have fun. Let the kids lead, and that'll help them as they're getting comfortable out there, getting social again during this time. I want to thank Little League. I want to thank Dan for your time today and our partnership with Little League. All those tuning in, please access those resources that are provided for you. We want to make sure that you have support throughout this season, and we'll continue to support you. Thanks again to all those tuning in. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us and check out our websites as well. Thanks again so much, and we wish everyone have a great day and good luck the rest of this season.
Thank you very much.